Hello there, and thank you for watching this video. My name is Gary Hilliard. I'm Deputy Head Teacher here at Carlton Academy. I know that you'll be watching this because you were unable to join us for our Year 11 Parent Help Your Child to Revise evening, and therefore you're having a look at this to kind of see what the session was all about. Hopefully, by the end of this shorter presentation, I'll have gone through what we went through on the night, but also you'll have some tips for supporting your child over the coming weeks and months to prepare for their exams. We started looking at a video. I'm not going to share that video with you tonight, but we looked at a video around Derek Redmond, who in the 1992 Olympics was a medal hope for Britain, but unfortunately as he was racing around the first part of the track, he pulled his hamstring and fell to the ground, but was determined to finish the race, got up and started limping and hobbling towards the finish line. Then all of a sudden, a gentleman comes out of the crowd to support him, grabs hold of him and wants to help him over the line. That person was his dad, not a random spectator, but dad who was there to see him and did support him by putting his arm around his neck and taking him over the finish line. The analogy I made on the night was that this is what the next few weeks and months are going to be like. There'll be some good points, but there'll also be some points at which there'll be stress. There'll be maybe some anxiety, maybe some struggle, and maybe some things that aren't as successful. And it's your role and responsibility to really support your young person through those coming weeks and months, and be like Derek Redmond's dad and make sure they get over that finish line. So on the evening, we talked about the time that was left. There were 4 weeks until the March mocks, and there were about 14 weeks or 11 school weeks, until the first GCSE exam. Actually, it's probably only a week now by the time you're watching this to the March, and only about 11 weeks or 9 school weeks before their final exam. So time is of the essence. Time is getting close to their final examinations. Now, revision doesn't have to be like this. So the aim of the session was to put some things into place and support you to make sure that revision doesn't look like this for your child. So the first thing we talked about was what you can do to help. Make sure that they are in the right frame of mind and what you can do to support them to be in that right frame of mind. You must be relentlessly optimistic. Don't look at the downsides of things or the negatives. Really look at the positives and remind them that they are going to do well on a constant basis. Be positive with them. Think about what you say. Ask them to talk you through what the revision they've done rather than saying, I bet you've not done any. Be really positive and be really kind of positive in the phrases that you use with them. Don't make the assumption that things are not happening. Emphasising the positives and not dwelling on the errors. Yes, there will be some mistakes over the next 8 to 9 weeks, but life is full of mistakes. We all make them. So don't dwell on those, but dwell on the things that are going well. Pick your battles. Think about whether then is the right time to ask them to wash the pots or tidy their room. Do they need to do it at that point in time? Don't join in their anxiety. You be the model of calm confidence. Don't be having conversations. I'm as stressed as you are. You're the calm one. Be stressed when they're not in the room. And don't continue to refer to how you or others in the family have revised. Everybody's individual. They revise in different ways. Not everybody will revise in the same way to be successful, so please don't make those constant references. There are some practical things that you can do to make sure the conditions are right for revision. So for example, making sure they've got the right space. A messy bedroom's not conducive to good revision, but something like that is. Equally, that may taste nice, it might give you a bit of short-term sugar, but it's not right for the brain. Try and encourage them to eat proteins, fruit, veg regularly. We know there are distractions on social media. I'll talk about that in a second. But having the distraction being a period of time when they have a break rather than whilst they're revising would be good to build in. And finally, getting the right balance is important. Nobody's going to ask them to revise all of the time, every day. They don't need to do that, but they do need to balance work commitments with social life, with revision, to make sure their exams are the best they can possibly be. Now, we know there are lots of distractions, very different to when you and I were revising for exams. We didn't have as much social media around at the time, but now it is everywhere. So it is important that those distractions are taken away where possible. And we also know there are lots of games that young people would prefer to be playing than actually revising. So again, having that balance and building that into the timetable is really crucial. Now, I constantly refer to this with the students, and I spoke about this on the evening as well. This is Ebbinghouser's forgetting curve. And what he basically says, if you look at the green line, if you learn something today and never revisit it at all that's going to happen is you will forget the vast majority of it. And you can see the end there. You remember about 20% of it. If you do a review straight after, maybe a couple of hours after, then actually you'll remember a little bit more. If you then review a second time around a day later, you'll now remember about 40%. If you review a third time, maybe a week later, you'll remember about 60%. And if you do a review a month later, so 4 different slots to review that information, you remember around 85% of it. Now, that's really important when thinking about planning revision sequences and revision timetables. And that's the next bit we'll have a talk about. So a couple of weeks ago, the students were given this same activity to do in lesson to prepare their own revision timetables. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that. I'm going to show you 3 revision timetables. If you're watching this with your child, you might want to pause when I say and have a discussion with them about what they found out about this timetable, whether it was good, bad, etc., before listening to me talk through it. So here's the first timetable. You might want to pause now to discuss it. Clearly, there's not much revision happening here. So a lot of personal time, a lot of things happening outside of school, a lot of, own time. There's a little bit of revision that happens from 9 to 10, which is probably a little bit too late to actually revise, and a little bit on a Saturday. I think it's quite cheeky that this person gives themselves Sunday off when they've done a limited amount of revision. Here's the second one. Have a chat and pause it. So this one's a little bit different. This is probably too much revision. Again, quite late at night, too many subjects each day, for example, and the same pattern maybe doesn't help the brain to find newness, to find something to focus on that's different to what happened the day before. So this is the opposite of the one before. Probably far too much revision at this stage and not enough social life. The balance isn't right. And this is the third one. Pause the video and have a discussion if that's what you want to do. So this one's a little bit better. Finally stops revising at 9 o'clock, which is good. Breaks down the weekend into chunks of revision. Again, maybe a bit repetitive. Might want to change those subjects around a bit again to give the brain a bit of a refresh. There's plenty of time where they're not doing something as well. So this is probably close to where a revision timetable should be. Not perfect, but better. So what I ask people on the night to do is to have a go at looking at a staggered timetable, look at it over a period of time and take into account that forgetting curve. So thinking about when those revision slots took place. So maybe the 2nd of the month, they did some science revision. They did the same bit of revision the next day, then a few days later, then a week later, then a month later to build that memory capacity. This is something you might want to do. There are some resources that you can download from the website where this video was. So you may want to do those this exercise with your young person as well. So the final thing we looked at then was the revision cycle. This is a Red Hill model of how to revise effectively. It comes into 5 parts: the making of materials, the memorizing of information, the practice of retrieving that information, and then testing yourself before reviewing how effective the revision process has been. So in the stage 1 make, it's really important to activate both sides of the brain. Both sides of the brain operate different things. As you can see there, the right side is about passion, creativity. That's the right side. The left side is about logic, is about analysis, is about words and numbers. So making sure that both sides are working together allows the brain to work at its full capacity. So when they're producing their materials, such as flashcards, such as a revision cheat sheet here, such as a mind map, for example, such as a spider diagram that you can see on the top, encourage them to use colour properly. So you can see on the mind map, each branch is a different colour, so they begin to associate a topic with a colour. The flashcards use pictures, that notes are breaking down into different colours. Red for headings, you can see there. blue for key information, green was used for explanation. So there's a real thinking behind what those materials look like. Now, they've obviously got to make those materials, and nobody is saying that you can check them necessarily for their content unless you are a specialist in those areas or have done those areas yourself. However, what you can do is check that they've got all the materials they actually need, and also make sure that you're talking to them about what they're doing with those materials once they've made them. The worst thing they can do is make lots of materials but then never use them effectively. So the second area, stage 2 of the revision cycle, is to memorize the material that they have been learning and they've written onto their revision materials. So one method they'll be really used to is the red pen, blue pen approach, or 2-pen approach. Taking their information, reading through it, and then on a sheet of paper, writing down as much as they can remember in one colour. Once they've done that, they go back to their information again, check, tick off what they've got, and then in a second colour, add the additional information that they couldn't remember. What's really important there is that they're now identifying things that just aren't embedded in their brain at this point in time. Equally, they could do a rewrite reduce activity. Take a sheet or a topic from a revision guide or take their revision clock, reduce it down into one side of A4, then the 5 most important bits, then into 5 keywords. And then they try to rewrite that information just using their 5 keywords. Again, it's training the brain to remember information. Now, this picture is not aimed at bedrooms looking like this, but if there is 1 or 2 pieces of information, if there are 1 or 2 pieces of information that they're really struggling to remember, then having a post-it note on the place they go to the most, maybe the fridge door, maybe their hairdryer, maybe their television, their Xbox, and they stick that on, they see that every time they're on that device or going to that place, then the brain is going to be reading that all of the time. It will help the brain to remember. But the most simple thing they could do is to be quizzed, to test themselves and test each other, recalling information for key questions. And that's where you come in. Encourage your child to do more than just read their notes. Make time to quiz them. Make time to check their knowledge. You don't need to understand that knowledge. If they've got a set of flashcards, you could ask them the question or give them the keyword and they could tell you what's on the other side of the card. And reward their success. When they remember information that they're struggling, provide some kind of stimulus or reward for them. Now, the third stage is the practice. Now they've memorized material, they've got to use that material. So, for example, they could create their own questions. They take a topic from the checklist that are provided to them. They use the question stems that are used in the exam to write their own questions. And then they can plan or write an answer to those questions. By doing it in that way, what they're doing is showing a really good understanding of the exam syllabus and the exam materials. Equally, they could just find an essay online and create a good plan for it. We're not at the writing stage at the moment. By putting a plan together, they can see what they can remember and they can go back over their notes on areas that they're struggling with to check that they've got the plan right before even answering the question. So essay planning is really important. And again, you can be checking that they're doing that as part of their revision process. And the final thing is to test. The final thing that they can be doing is actually testing that they have remembered the information by finally applying it to an exam question. And the easiest way to do that is to revise a topic and then complete a past paper without notes, and they can access all of those online, and I've shared with them where most exam board past papers are. They could mark a past paper, green for totally correct, amber for partially correct, and red for incorrect, and by using that marking scheme they can use that to focus on their next set of revision, making sure they're planning to revise areas that they're really struggling with. After all of that, and after they've done their March mocks in particular, they need to review what they've done. Has their process worked? Have they remembered that information in order to make sure that they have been successful in that exam? So there are just some suggestions for what the young people can do at home, but what you can do to support them with that revision too. Now we're supporting. We have subject-specific revision guides. Some students have received those. Others have been given the list of them. We have period 6s and period 0s. There will be half-term revision sessions over Easter and likely WIT. And 70+ students in Year 11 have also been allocated to a member of SLT for mentoring. So other than day-to-day teaching, there's all sorts of other material and other support there for young people that we're providing. So just to give a kind of conclusion to this session, remember that some revision is better than none, and a lot is better than too much. They've got to get the balance right. It's unwise to do too much in one day and none on another, so breaking it down over days is crucial. Concentration span is constantly changing, depends on the time of the day, etc. Half an hour is about right for needing to change an activity. So not revising for more than half an hour in blocks is a good idea. So it's important that they don't revise for more than around 30 to 40 minutes. Students should have a day a week free from revision, but that doesn't necessarily mean one full day. So it could be 2 half days, it could be a couple of hours each day, making sure there's some clear space for them to have their own time. The ideal scenario, as I've said, for revising is 40-minute chunks followed by about a 10-minute break. And also make sure there's chance for healthy eating, some walking, some exercise, etc., to give the brain a rest. Ultimately, this is going to be one of the most stressful periods in a young person's life so far. So the most important thing you can do is to be there for them. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Hope it's been useful, and good luck to you and your children as they prepare for their Year 11 final exams.